Good evening and welcome to the Positive Power Hour. I'm your host, Dan McBee, and this is my co-host, Cheryl. Say hi to everybody, Cheryl.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Welcome to our Positive Power Hour. And as I stated in our post this morning, let's start the week off with a shot of positivity, right? And we all need more positive, especially the way things are in our world today, right? It's just a little bit wacky out there. And Kimmy says, hello, everybody, with a happy face. That's the
Hi,
idea.
Kimmy.
Exactly what we're talking about. And if you're watching this recording, welcome to you as well. And for anybody, if you will please put some happy faces on there, or likes or loves or whatever in the little emoji area there, that would be awesome. We'd certainly appreciate it. And this has been quite an amazing time in our lives. And Cheryl and I were talking about history and how if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? And we've gotten a great example of that in Israel and Hamas this week, right? Everybody killing each other over a little sliver of land that isn't the size of California, right? Tiny little piece of land. And they can't get along as neighbors. I don't know who's at fault. I think they're both at fault. But the truth of the matter is we're killing people over who has a right to govern over them. We're killing thousands of people.
Innocent people.
Innocent people who are just like you and I, trying to raise a family and hopefully give them a better life than we've had, right? They're exactly the same, whether they're Muslim or Jewish or whatever their religious background is, whatever their color is, whatever. And Cheryl and I were talking about this very thing. They've still got red blood just like we do. They've all got that spark of God in them just like we do. So let's hope that calmer heads avail. One of the things I shared with Cheryl is my strong belief that women ought to be running the world because we'd have a heck of a lot less killing in the world. And you ladies would look at how we can make things better rather than how can I conquer somebody or something, or how can I get more when there's people starving, right? How do we take care of each other? How do we make this world a better place for everybody? Well, I have a suggestion for one way we can do that. Start with a smile, right? Start with a smile. I've got a post I'm going to pull up for you here. Let me get it on my phone right now. It was posted by a friend of mine. I think I've lost it. Let me try to find it because it was so good. It said, goodness gracious. I'll semi-quote, right? It says, when something's happening in the world that you can't control, how about trying to control how you respond to it? That's where the real power is. And that's what we talk about on our show here every week, don't we? We talk about the fact that we didn't create a war, but we can lose our heads over it, or we can do something about it, but most importantly, not lose our emotional balance. I've seen people get absolutely besides themselves over something that was happening in the world. Did it make the situation any better?
No.
Of course not. If that person really cared enough, maybe they put together a care box and ship it off to wherever the place was or whatever was going on. But too many of us are more willing to just complain or, be sad over or whatever, which is none of the things that will help anybody in any way. It's a useless emotion. It's a useless use of energy. It's a to me, almost sinful use of that creative force that God gave each of us to live in this world. So we have a responsibility to everybody else, but particularly to ourselves, to stay focused on that inside balance. Because if you're in balance, if you're living in the moment, that's where the power is. That's when you can be effective. That's when you can recognize somebody that's having a bad day. And maybe just give them that smile we were talking about, right? Maybe it's just that simple. Maybe it's give them a give them a bottle of water. I have a friend that had a challenge with giving to beggars on the street, for another word. What's another word for those guys that are panhandling, right?
Right.
And he said, I don't know whether to give them money, or if I give them money, are they just going to go buy something to drink or get a fix or whatever, right? And I thought about that, and my teacher would say, you don't know what's going to help. You have no idea. Maybe if you give him that $1, it changes his whole life.
Yeah, you can't control what they're going to do with it because you're giving out of the goodness of your own heart.
That's right.
So what they do with it, that's up to them.
That's up to them. But his solution to it was to carry a case of bottled water with him everywhere he goes. Keeps it in his car. And when he comes up to a person that's got the sign out on the freeway off ramp and, anything will help, he tosses them a bottle of water. Is that helping the person? Yeah. I mean, water is probably one of the best things he could give them, right? Yeah. Food would be great, but, you don't usually carry a lot of food in your car, right?
Right.
But if you don't feel comfortable giving money, don't give it. If you feel comfortable giving water, give water. And if you don't feel like doing anything, don't do anything. That's, you have that right too, right?
Right.
And again, it goes back to empowering yourself, because then you can help other people. And the real power comes from recognizing that the only thing you have total control over is yourself, your emotions, your thinking. I've been working on a video. Actually, I've been working on a number of videos that we're going to be using on our social media marketing and things. And it's all about mind whispering the whisper way, right? Like it says on the sign back there, right? Mind whispering the whisper way. Because it really starts with the mind. Everything does. If you have a mind that's constantly telling you you're a piece of garbage, what are you?
It's a piece of garbage, because that's what your mind is telling you. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? If the mind is telling you all of those character defects that you've got, what are you thinking? You can't do that. I don't know about you. I had a terribly negative mind who fed me all kinds of garbage. I mean, the beatings I went through were awful, right? So how can you create the life you want to create if your mind is always trying to sabotage you? At the very least, it's exhausting. It's a battle listening to that thing going in the back of your head all day long, right? It's like, God, shut up, right? And most of us have that. Going back to one of my favorite sayings, right, about Walt Whitman saying that the huddled masses live in quiet desperation. How can you not be in quiet desperation if your mind is talking to you nonstop with garbage that doesn't help you at all, right? So one of the things we talk about quite often is how many of us on the show tonight or, watching the recording here were told by their parents that the number one thing they needed to do was train their mind. Were you told that, Cheryl?
No.
I certainly wasn't told that. I don't think I've ever met, well, I've read of people, I think we mentioned this a week or two ago, about Steve Jobs and maybe Elon Musk and maybe a few other people were raised in that kind of environment of, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. There's nothing stopping you but you, right? And they got that early on. And that's one of the common threads of highly successful people, is that whether they got it early in life or late in life, they got it. They got the idea that nothing is going to stop them, that setbacks are only a learning lesson. It just means you move forward more, right? Well, whether you aspire to be the next Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or Rockefeller or whoever, one of the highly successful people, if you aspire for that, great for you. Or if you just want to be the best husband you can be, or the best wife you can be, and maybe the best employee that there is, or the best business owner that there is, that's up to you. That's up to me. Nobody stops me from getting what I want, except me. Maybe I go along and, as I was telling my wife today, video editing is a lot of work. Now, once you've mastered it, I'm sure it's really just boom, 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 and you get it done. But that's kind of like anything, right? I remember learning how to ride a bike and falling down. I can't tell you how many times before I got to where I could ride down the street without going like that and, worrying that I was going to fall, right? But that's about getting your mindset right. And that's what we're doing here on every single week. We talk about getting your mindset right. You are not a loser. You are not less capable than anybody else to achieve your life the way you want it to be. One of the things that I love seeing, and God graces me with this experience so many times in the course of a week, course of a day, is people who would be classified as special learning, or what do they call them? There's different words for people that have maybe some mental challenges or emotional challenges. Do you know what that is?
Special needs, learning disabilities.
Yeah. But what I always experience, and the more severely,
they call them challenged.
Challenged, huh? Yeah. There's a lot of different words, right? But one of the things that I find is that the more challenged they are, the more grace they share. I mean, it just exudes from them a happiness and a peacefulness that most of us functioning people really have no clue of, right?
But are we really functioning?
Well, that's why I want functioning, right? Because they aren't all wrapped up in all that stuff, right? They get it, that the moment is all that whether they know it intuitively or whether it's just the way they're living because of the situation that they're in, they have more joy than most of us will feel in a month every day, right? They are just happy. Wonderful examples to me that there isn't anything that's going on in the course of the day that's worth losing your mind over. That's worth getting all upset and being, bitter and angry and frustrated and all of those things. Another post I saw on Facebook today that said that there are people in the world who find joy and happiness in the world. And there are those in the world that find anger and bitterness and hatred. It's the same world.
Yeah.
It's the same world. We choose which one we want to have. Do we want to be angry and bitter and jealous and all of the hateful stuff that's out there? Or do we want to be a part of the world that shares happiness and joy and giving, knowing that the more we give, I love that saying that I hear so often that, you can't outgive God, right?
Right.
But it sure is fun trying. So what gets us so often, we were talking about this too, Cheryl and I, it was before our talk here about how went right away. I'm sure it'll come back. We were talking about, let's see, what were we talking about just a minute ago? Do you remember?
Which part?
Yeah, right. You can't outgive God. And we were talking about, oh, goodness. It'll come back to me. Well, I'm sure it will. And if it doesn't, oh, well, right? Okay. But, we talked about a lot of things before our meeting, and
yes.
about what, 20 minutes or so, we got to talk a little bit and
yes.
catch up on things. And, so goodness, what in the world was I talking about? Anybody know?
Something to do with outgiving God. Your last comment was about you can't outgive God. So
can't outgive God, and fear. That's what it was. We were talking about fear, and I was sharing about how I had some friends that lived across the pond, and my experience of them was that they were a lot less fearful than we Americans are.
Right.
And, if you go back, and we talked about history, right? About how, you see the same things happening over and over and over and over. And too many people live in fear. And of course, the power mongers love to feed us fear because it gets them what they want, right? Oh, look out. They're going to, they've got all these people coming in here and they're all rapists and murderers and all, no, they're not. Most of them are parents that are trying to give their family a better life, right? And that's, to me, the difference of what I experienced with my friend. What we were talking about was that we all have bodily functions, right? And no matter what color you are or what age you are or what sex you are, we all have bodily functions. And yeah, we don't talk about them. We certainly don't use the words to describe what we're doing. But my friend from the pond was telling me that in their community, if somebody needed to use the loo bathroom, they just walk into somebody's house and go use the bathroom and then walk out. And I thought, when he was telling me that story, I thought, God, how bizarre is that? I mean, if somebody walked into a home here, they'd probably get shot or arrested. Yes. Right? When all the guy wanted to do was take care of his bodily needs, right? But over there, it's like no big deal. So what? Someone walks in your house, no big deal, right? Wow. Of course, they don't have many guns over there either, right? But it's more than just the weaponry. It's the fear. Right. We have to have 14 guns in our home because somebody might try to attack us. Have you had that happen to you yet? Well, no. Well, okay. 14 guns. How many can you use at one time?
Definitely not 14.
Definitely not 14. And the vast majority of gun owners don't even know how to use it right. And they wouldn't know how to use it in an attack because the mind goes off in 14,000 different directions, and all those things they taught you about safety training and defending yourself went out the window when you're scared to death you're going to die. So you're going to go out and grab that gun and shoot like crazy and probably shoot 14 people that have nothing to do with that thing that you were afraid of, right? Fear. And it reminds me that when I first got involved in this work, which was 40 some odd years ago now, right? 42 years ago, 44 years ago. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I was talking with my mentor, and we were talking about fear and the difference between positivity and negativity. And we talked about, like when we're born, we have no fear. It's a learned response, just like bigotry is a learned response. See babies get together, they don't have all the white babies playing by themselves and all the black babies playing with themselves. They all just play with each other. To them, they're all just brothers and sisters, right? They're just babies. So we learn those things. Fear is a learned response. But just like almost everything else we learn, we can learn that there's very little that we really have to be afraid of. If you realized how little fear you really need to pay attention to, you'd have a whole lot more energy, that creative energy, to create positivity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But we'll let our mind go crazy, right? Gosh, I feel a little bump on my cheek. I wonder what that is. I wonder how long it's been there. And you can go on for hours trying to decide, well, gee, maybe it's cancer. Maybe I should go in and get an x-ray. Oh my God, well, if it's cancer, they're going to have to cut in there, and they might even have to take my jawbone out. And if they do that, how will I eat? And, we can carry it out, ad infinitum, right? And we all do that to some degree, don't we?
Yes.
The mind goes unchecked. But when you live in the moment, when and like that poster said, that when you choose to control that which you have control over, which is how you respond to things in life, that's where the power is. When you can live in the moment and be able to really look at a situation with no emotion, but just say, this is what's happening, this is what I should do, you're in the power, because you're not operating out of fear. You're just taking the next indicated step. What should I do? Now, do any of us have it nailed down?
No.
I certainly don't. You might. You're much closer to that than I am, I'm sure. But we all have work we can do in that regard, right? But here's the great thing about it. Even though maybe we haven't evolved as quickly as we would like, maybe we haven't reached that level of nirvana that we'd all like to live in, where there's nothing ever going wrong and everything is perfect. Sorry, that ain't never going to happen, first of all. Second of all, it's from where you are right now, right? You can't get to where you want to go if you don't know from where you're starting. And that's, again, where living in the moment is so important. Because when you're living in the moment, you're aware of how you respond to things, whether it's at the level that you would like to, or you would like to look at that and go, I could do that better if I do this next time. I've been practicing that a lot in this world, this cashier world that I'm living in currently. Been a wonderful experience, because I've been able to watch myself be reactive to some situations rather than responsive. And it's about being humble enough to look at myself and say, you could do this one better. Or, I made a comment one day, and it wasn't a positive comment, and it wasn't necessary. So I actually walked up to the person that I thought I might have offended by the comment. And I said, if I offended you in any way, I'm terribly sorry. And she said, what the hell are you talking about? I said, well, I said something that I shouldn't have said, and I thought you heard it and you were offended. She goes, no, I never heard a thing from you. I've never heard you say anything bad. I said, well, now I know you're crazy. But the point was, I told her, I said, oh, good, now I can sleep tonight, right? But that's about caring more about other people than you care about yourself, right? Right. If I only cared about how I was feeling, I'd say, well, screw her. And if she heard it, too bad for her. And that's the way it goes, right? But no, I cared about possibly hurting her feelings. And my spiritual teacher would talk about the greatest sin on earth is hurting the feelings of another. But that's the greatest sin. And I thought, wow, that seems kind of harsh. What about murder? All right. Yeah, that kind of hurts the person's feelings too, right? But anyway, the point was that most of us go around doing that and not even think a thing about it, right? Like if someone cuts you off in the car and you flip them the finger and you're talking about what an a-hole a person is and all of that, that's all negativity. And whether the person hears it or not, even with that friend of mine that I was concerned that I might have offended, the energy is out there. I remember telling you all the story about the friend of mine that had lost a leg, and he came out here to get fitted with a new prosthesis. And the doctor was having a hard time getting it right. And my friend was getting more and more frustrated every time he went in for a fitting. And he was just, he'd come back and he'd be yelling, he'd be screaming, not screaming and yelling, but just frustrated about the experience he went through, right? It just had him up on, it was just so tense. And after about the fourth time he went to get fitted and the thing didn't work out right, I took him aside and I said, look. He said, look, I've been nice to the guy. I said, well, your energy doesn't convey that. He knows you're frustrated with him, which only makes him more nervous.
Right.
And when he puts your leg into the prosthesis and it doesn't fit right, he's devastated because he knows you're going to be frustrated. And everybody wants to do a good job, right? So instead of getting frustrated with him, may I suggest that when you walk into the office, tell him how much you appreciate all the hard work he's been doing to try to get your prosthesis right. And you understand how difficult a process it is, and you're really grateful for his help. He says, well, he doesn't know that I'm frustrated. I said, yes, he does. I guarantee you he knows it. Whether he even knows it or not, he knows it, right? So he walked in and he did exactly that. He told the guy, gosh, I really appreciate all the effort you've given me. And I know that we're going to get this resolved. And whether it's today or the next time or 10 more times from now, I appreciate that you don't give up and that you're as determined to get it right as I am to have it right. How much time did it take to do that? Half a minute, maybe, right?
Right.
The interesting thing was he went and put his leg into the prosthesis and it didn't fit right. But the doctor looked at it and he goes, I see what the problem is. Took it to the back, made an adjustment, put it in, bingo, worked. Now, I love stories like that, and God knows I've got a ton of them, right? But they're great examples to me about how we can handle everything a little better. And if that's what I'm striving for, if that's my focus.
Yeah, when you're nicer to people, they're willing to go the extra mile for you.
Absolutely, right? And it doesn't take a whole lot. And, so many times in the course of my workday, I'll get a customer that goes, God, you're so nice. Thank you so much, right? Or, you're so patient with me. And I said, well, you're doing fine. And I'm here till 5:30 no matter what. So we'll get through this, right? And they walk out feeling good, which is my intention. It's what I want, just like this broadcast, right? I've had to blow it off a few times sometimes just forgetting that I had a Monday thing to do, sometimes for family events or situations that come up, surgical things or whatever the case might be. Sometimes I can't make it. But my desire is to be here every Monday at 6 p.m. to share with you some little tidbits that might make a difference in how you think, in how you feel, and how you give. Have you ever just done something for somebody without any expectation of a return?
Yes.
Yes, I know you have. Most of us have, right? Do we do it as often as we could?
No.
Do we try to do it every opportunity we can? No.
No.
No. All right. So how about if we just do it a little more? Right? How about if just that one time where old Dan could have opened his mouth and spewed out something that didn't need to be said, he just goes, yeah, okay. Right? We've all done it. Just like we all have bodily functions, right?
Right.
None of us are unique. We all have lived in that quiet desperation that we talk about. Sometimes we still do. For me, the living in quiet desperation usually lasts about a minute or two now. That's about it. That took a lot, 40 some odd. Well, I really started on the journey of self-discovery when I was like 28, which was a couple days ago, right? And I'm still on it, right? It hasn't ended yet. And the fact of the matter is I'll be doing this until I die, right?
Right.
Whatever time that is, when God decides to take me home, I'll probably say, hey, could I just do a little bit more before you take me home? And he'll go, yeah, that's Dan, all right, right? But what I want to do is give back to as many people as I can who showed me the way. You know, I had people show me the way who, you know, like my dear friend, my mentor, who, you know, had to kick my butt over and over to get me to realize that I was of value because I couldn't see it. I didn't have any value as far as I was concerned. And I'm sure that there's at least one person that's going to watch this video that feels the same way. Guarantee it. Because we've all been there. We've all had a time in our life, whether it was after a divorce, after a loss of a family member, loss of a job, loss of a love life, whatever it was, that we had that time where we felt of no value. I couldn't be of value or that person wouldn't have done that to me. Right? We've all had those kinds of feelings. The trick or the grace of that is to look at that experience and go, well, how can I turn that to a positive? Like I shared about the Twin Towers coming down and how horrific that whole experience was, sitting in front of my TV and watching those buildings collapse, knowing that there were hundreds of thousands of people in those buildings that no longer exist, and how horrific it was. And my friend that, you know, came to me and said, Dan, wasn't that just the worst thing in the world? I said, well, it was pretty bad, but you know, there is some positive that came from it. Oh God, you and your positivity. What the hell is positive about all those people perishing and all of the fear that's going on and everything? It's just awful. I said, well, yeah, but let's look at some positives, shall we? We know that stuff happened. We can't change that, right?
Right.
But look at the things that were good that happened from it. I have a couple friends who lived in New York, and they came and lived out here. Excuse me. And she was sharing how she was in a store one day, in La Mesa. Or anyway, she was in a store and a guy walked by her and just bumped into her as he was walking down the aisle. And it made her smile. Because that's the way it is in New York. You don't go anywhere without people bumping into you, she told me. I've never been there. I don't know it personally. But for her, it was a feeling of warmth and caring that somebody bumped into her, right?
To remind her of home.
Exactly right. Yes. And that, you know, as much as you and I might think about all the hustle and bustle of living in New York City, for her, it was about humanity. And, you know, the positive things about what happened with the Twin Towers is that all of us cared a little bit more about each other and for each other after that happened. The people that died don't have to deal with this plane anymore. They've graduated. They're not suffering anymore in any way whatsoever. They graduated. We're the ones still here trying to work out the lessons, right? The family members that lost their loved ones have remembrances that will carry them the rest of their lives. And all of us, including them, were reminded one more time that we don't know what the next second is going to bring to our life. So we better make it positive. Nobody got in their car this morning thinking they're going to die on their way to work. But some people did. Guarantee it. Right?
Right.
And when we're young, of course, we're all going to live forever. And sex will be absolutely great until we're 90. And, you know, all the things that we think when we're young, right? We don't give any thought to the fact that those grains of sand in the hourglass of our lives keeps pouring out every single day. And the next moment is not guaranteed to any of us. And it kind of goes back to that the youth is wasted on the young, right? Because when we're young, we've got all this energy, we've got all these things we want to do, and our body feels good, and we can run and jump and go for 20 hours a day and fall asleep for 4 hours and get up and do it again, right? Because we're indefatigable at that point in our life, right? Then you get older and the joints start hurting. The eyes don't work the same. We're both wearing glasses, right?
Yes.
And, you know, the hairline goes back further and further, right? Hair grows where you don't want it to grow and doesn't grow where you want it to. And, you know, getting old is not for sissies. Anyone that's of any, you know, advanced age can tell you that. It's not easy.
That's right.
So don't wait until you're old to make a difference in your own life. So many people, myself included, figured they'll reach retirement age and then they'll retire and start enjoying their lives. And until then, they work themselves to death. I remember a post years ago talking about the foolishness of man, that he sacrifices his health in his young years to make a fortune and conquer the world. And then in his later years, he spends all of that fortune trying to regain his health in his life. So we do it backwards, right? Yeah. And we talked about how my wife and I were talking today about the fact that most people work 5 days a week and have 2 days off. What the hell is that? Does that make sense to anybody in this audience? No. And we talked about the fact that God didn't create these rules. He didn't create money. He didn't create castes. He didn't create classes. He didn't create richness and poverty. He gave all of this to us free. It's what we've done with it.
Right.
That has made the mess, right? And we're all paying the price because too many people think that the most important thing in their life is more. Stupid Henry. This has to be Luke. Stupid Henry Ford creating the 5-day work week. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if he did it and you corrected it to week. Yep. I don't know if he did it. I'm sure you're right. You probably are better at history than I am. But you're right. It's like we spend the vast majority of our life trying to make enough money to live. You get 2 days off. What is it you do the first day after your 5 days of working?
If you get a chance, you get some sleep.
Yeah, right? It's not living yet. It's still existing. We weren't brought on this earth just to exist. It was to make a difference. It was to raise a family, to create love in your life, and to enjoy the beauties of the world and of the world's people, of God's children. But when you're working 5 and 6 days a week, how are you going to do that? So I don't know the answer to that. It's way above my pay grade and above my little mind that I have, right? But there has to come back to some balance to where, it's a political thing, I suppose, but to me, it's really an economical thing. The idea of trickle-down theory was that if you give the rich more money, it'll trickle down to the poor people. How'd that work? Not very well.
No.
Some people are still thinking that's the way it ought to be done, right?
Right.
When the reality is, if you give money to poor people, what are they going to do with it? They're going to spend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to pay bills.
Huh?
They're going to pay bills.
Pay bills and see a doctor, which is going to lower the medical costs in the world because healthy people don't spend as much at the hospitals, right? Right. So you give poor people more money, the economy grows. Yeah. Think about that, right? And so, it's like my friend, Cheryl and I were talking about my friend Joe that has a very successful business. And to me, and Cheryl agreed also, that one of the big things that makes him hugely successful is that he treats his employees exceedingly well. They all get paid far more money than they'd make anywhere else doing what they do. And they know it. They appreciate it. They're happy to come to work. They're happy to help Joe make more money because they benefit as well, which is the way it ought to be.
Yes.
It's not a complicated formula. And it reminds me of the poster I saw that showed a picture of a big, heavy set guy going, he's got the fork and spoon going to his mouth, right? And the caption on it says, "It isn't that we can't feed the poor. It's that we can't satisfy the hunger of the rich." Mm. Now, I don't have anything against people getting rich. God bless them. God bless my friend Joe, who does it the right way. Joe has done so many charitable things for so many people that he never talks about. Maybe once in a while he'll share something with me, but he doesn't boast about it. He just, to him, it's what he should be doing, because to those much is given, much is expected. And he understands that, right?
Right.
And if everybody felt that way, if we paid our employees enough money for them to live, if they got paid a living wage, which is different in California than it is in Alabama, right? So, I mean, all of that is on a scale, right?
Right.
But everybody deserves to be able to have a roof over their head and good medical care. I mean, to me, that's just a human right, right? So why don't we all practice that a little bit more, even in our jobs? We have the ability of sharing, gosh, wouldn't you, even with the boss, gosh, wouldn't it be great if everybody made enough money to have a roof over their head? Right?
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah. I've shared in here that, I grew up in a family of 9 children, right? And my dad worked all the time. He was an entrepreneur, and unfortunately, I learned how to not be successful as an entrepreneur from my father. He never succeeded in it either, right? But I never stopped, and neither did he. Up until the later years of his life, he was still trying to make something work, which to me, that's all you can do.
Right.
God's grace, whether it comes through or not, right? But God, it's happened to me again.
You and your dad were entrepreneurs, and
and entrepreneurs are the only people on earth that are willing to work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40, right? But, the whole idea is that, and it goes back to fear. We don't say anything to our bosses because we're afraid we'll get fired. Why? Because it's like it's one of the greatest contradictions in terms is that if you work for a company, you have to give a 2-week notice if you're going to quit.
Right, but they can fire you at the drop of a dime.
Exactly right. Why do we buy into that crap, right? Yes. No, if and look, the young kids today, your kids and their kids are much smarter than we were or are, right, Cheryl? Because they don't buy into that crap, right? I mean, in my day, which of course that was when the dinosaurs, I had to run around a dinosaur on crutches, right, with my leg in a cast and go to work. Because I went to work like a day after I got out of the hospital, because that's what you're supposed to do. You have to work.
Or you don't get paid.
What the hell is that, right? I'm going to jeopardize my health for a paycheck. But the companies give you sick time, but you don't take it because you're afraid to. At least that's the way I grew up, right? Today, kids go, if you don't treat me right, I'm out of here. I don't need to take that abuse. And I hear companies, I've heard bosses say, well, kids today, they just don't want to work. And I said, well, I'm sure there are some that just don't want to. I said, but really, it's more to me from what my experience has been is that they're just smarter than we were.
And they live with their parents.
They have to anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
They can't afford to get a place.
You can't afford to get your own place. Why worry about it? Mom and dad's already paying the rent. Right? So they have a whole different mindset than you and I did when we were kids, right? And I'm much older than you, so it's even worse. But, for them, if they've got a roof over their head and they've got a few bucks in their pocket, they're happy. They weren't trying to run out. In fact, I know people in this younger generation that aren't even caring all that much about dating. They just want to play games and have fun. They're not all wrapped up like we were about, the things we were wrapped up about back in the day, right? Who's got it better? I think they're a lot smarter than we were. I really do. So maybe we can learn some things from the kids as much as the kids learn from us. And that's my hope, right? I think I shared the story about the day in one of the Best Buy stores in the lunchroom. I was sitting with a number of young men. And I was sharing with them that when I was young, my parents were rather bigoted, right? And we would say things. They would say things. And you pick it up and you do it too without even thinking about it. Until one day you start thinking. And I would never today say the things that I would say back when I was a young man. Never would I say those things. That's evolving, right? The kids today won't take the abuse that you and I took in a job when we were young. They just won't do it. They'll just go to lunch and not come back.
Right.
Good for them, right?
Right.
There was a boss in one of the stores that I worked in who was a football coach. He was the general manager, right? District manager. And he must have been trained to coach the old school rules where you screamed and yelled at the kids and threw them a fit and called them all kinds of names and everything to get them to play the right way.
Mm.
That doesn't work today. Kids are smarter than that. Most of them have learned more about communication than we ever did.
And some of them are extremely sensitive too.
Yes, yes. Is that bad or good?
It's kind of bad.
Kind of bad. Yeah, kind of bad. And that's what the old coach theory was about toughening the kids up, right? But here's the other thing I think about that is that's lazy coaching. It's much easier just to scream and yell at people rather than taking the time to figure out what motivates somebody. Because everybody has different motivational buttons, right?
Right.
You know, I told my dear mentor one day, he was upset at me about something. And I said, you know, I'm going to beat myself up a lot worse than you're going to try beating me up. So it really, you screaming and yelling at me really won't help me any. What would help me more is if you could show me how I could have done it differently so that I can do it better. And he just thought for a minute. He goes, I can do that. That's okay. Never did we have that kind of confrontation again.
Mm.
That's what I'm talking about, lazy communication, right? And I was not so much. My mom and dad were pretty good about it, but you know, you'd hear things like "you good for nothing kids" and you know, just those little things that we don't even think about. We just do it, right? So being mindful, paying attention. How are you communicating? Do you know what button to push to get a child to do what is best in their best interest, right?
Right.
It takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of getting to know somebody, right? But I'm a firm believer that, you know, there's an old saying that most of us learn one of two ways, either fear or love, positive or negative. And unfortunately, most of us respond to negative more than we do positive. Weird, isn't it?
It is.
But it's true.
Not good.
For now, right? Maybe more so in the past. Let's hope, right? So for tonight, let's make a pact with ourselves that we are going to control that which we have total control over. A little bit more. Maybe just a little bit more than we did last week. And like that post said, that's where the power is. When you find yourself being able to raise that level of consciousness, even a little bit, makes a huge difference in you and everyone around you. It's a self-made job. It's within ourselves. It's not out here, right? It's all in here. We have the power. God gave it to us. We have the mind that if we train to make it think the correct way, it'll give us, it's just like AI, right? If you don't give it commands that make it get where you want it to go, it's going to go off the left field. Artificial intelligence, it's all the same thing. You have to train that mind like you have to train AI to create the thing you're wanting to create. We do it all the time. We do it every day. We're just not very clear about it, right?
Right.
We create chaos or we create create, right? We create positivity or we create negativity. You can either be a wonderful role model or a horrible example. The choice is ours. The responsibility is for us to take that right choice, to take the right action a little bit more. And before you know it, it's like that spoon on the cave when you're trying to get out of the prison, right? You keep chipping and chipping and chipping. And if you don't quit, one day you're going to get through. So I believe that we're all made in God's likeness, that we have God's energy flowing through us, but we're not God.
No.
But we can strive to be more like him. And the more we do that, the more we become God-like. I can't imagine God going, those are aliens, kick them out.
No.
Right? So we're going to finish it up tonight the way we love to finish up the Positive Power Hour. And Cheryl, if you see somebody tonight or tomorrow who doesn't have a smile, what do you think you should do?
Give them one of mine.
And why would you do that?
Because it's free and it makes them feel good. And
it makes you feel good too, right?
Yes.
I want to thank you all for being on the call tonight. I appreciate the support, and no matter how many or how few are on our call, I feel that support and I appreciate it. And until next week, everybody, have an awesome week. It's your choice. Bye now. See you next time.